Hey everyone, you might be able to hear me at this point. I'm running into technical issues galore. So yeah, I'm not sure yet if I'm actually live or not. Okay, hey everyone, you might be able to hear me at this point. So here's the deal. If you're hearing this at all, I created a live event and it absolutely refuses to go live. So I had to create a second live event, and that's in theory what you're seeing me on right now. Can anyone confirm that you're actually seeing me? Anyone? Let's see here. That one. It's live. It's live. Okay, thank you everybody. You can see me. That's awesome. I apologize. Like I said, I created a live stream that was the original one, and I don't know. It absolutely will not go live. Whenever I give it the ingestion settings, it just says nope. Just says, it has like this error about how you can't test right now. I'm like, I don't know what the hell that means. I'm just, you dick. All right. Anyway, so hello, welcome everybody. Okay, so I wanted to try. I don't want to call this a series or anything. First, I want to apologize for the video quality because I'm using the old Xbox Live Vision camera. If you guys remember that thing. That's the only webcam I have. If I end up doing this more often, I'll probably invest in a better webcam. But really, there's no video component to this that's relevant or interesting. But as you can see, I have a much better mic for these type of things. So we're going to go with that. So the basic plan for this is I like the idea of occasionally talking about something that's not video games, although it could be video games. In this case, it won't be. Just kind of a subject that's been kind of floating around in my head, something I've been thinking about. And I want to talk to you guys and see what you guys think. And then after that, do a little bit of Q&A. I just thought maybe that might be kind of fun. And if you guys hate it, whatever, won't do it anymore. So there you go. And I apologize, I will be drinking coffee occasionally during the show because I'm an addict. Hi, Karu Ryder. You didn't miss anything other than technical problems and preamble. So to those who are just joining us, again, all I'm going to really do is talk about a subject. In this case, it's going to be the DC cinematic universe, the direction they're going with it. So hopefully you guys have seen Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, because that's largely what this will be. There will be a Q&A portion near the end, but I'm not going to go for a really long time because, you know, I just kind of wanted to do this and just see if you guys like the format. Okay, so let's begin by addressing the main subject here, the DC cinematic universe. Now, hopefully, you guys have seen those two movies, and I just want to vent basically my frustrations, because what you see with DC is they're trying to obviously make a cinematic universe like Marvel is doing. Marvel, of course, being under the umbrella of Disney, and Disney being, it seems like, the only people in a major studio that know how to run a cinematic universe, because they also have Star Wars under their belt, and these guys are doing a great job of creating films that link to other films, and then they just expand upon a universe that they keep building on. That's become the new model in Hollywood. A lot of companies are attempting to do that. Sony was attempting to do that with Spider-Man. That didn't work out. They are now attempting to do that with Ghostbusters, believe it or not, and that looks like it's going to fall extremely flat. So that's unfortunate for them. Obviously, Warner Brothers is trying to do that with the DCU, and that's what I want to talk about primarily, is the frustrations I have with the DC cinematic universe. Now, I'm a huge Superman fan. Like, you can see, I've got a Superman shirt rocking right there. I don't know how much of it you could actually see, but like, I'm a huge Superman fan. I'm also a fan of Batman and all that, and it frustrates me that they don't have a person like Kevin Feige for Marvel. Yes, I do like donuts. Thank you. Although I'm trying to eat better, I had fruit for breakfast, but thank you. Yeah, it frustrates me that they don't have someone at DC who's kind of keeping that ship together and just kind of giving them a direction. And so I'm gonna, not that they would ever care about my opinion, but I want to give them a nickel's a nickel's worth of free advice, as it were. I wish with the DCU I thought Man of Steel was good. It wasn't a great film, but it was a great starting off point. And what they should have done at that point was then say, okay, now we need to start doing individual films for the other characters in this cinematic universe. So they should have done a Batman movie. They should have done a Wonder Woman movie and all those other movies together. They should have done those before they ever touched Batman v Superman. I'm going to talk a lot about Batman v Superman because that's... like, that movie was frustrating in its chaos. Like, it should have been... I know I'm not articulating my thoughts on this too well, but it's just... there's so much frustration I have in that movie. I didn't hate it, but it certainly was, like, too early to have a movie like that. They basically tried to achieve all of Marvel Phase 1 and 2 in one movie, and that's insane. So let me pitch to you what I think would have been a good alternate history here. Imagine a Batman movie with Batfleck having come out second. That would have been the second movie in their universe. Imagine if it started exactly the same way that Batman v Superman does. It starts off with Bruce, and he's, you know, in the city, and then all of a sudden it's chaos, and, you know, you're seeing the ground version of the Superman fight in the city. And that whole beginning of that Batman movie could have been exactly the same, but rather than that gets to that point where it says 18 months later, it should have been, you know, 18 months earlier, or it should have been however many years earlier they wanted to go. And then you tell a Batman movie, okay? I think they should have done that with every single character. Like, Man of Steel should have been the first film, but there should have been events in Man of Steel that link to every other, what you want to call a Phase 1 film of the DCU. So, for example, what all those characters saw briefly of Superman in that movie. So we already saw Batman's, a good example for, like, Aquaman would have been when the World Engine thing was in the South Indian Ocean in Man of Steel, you know, fucking up that whole area. That could have been something that got Aquaman's attention. In other words, all of these characters already exist on the planet, on Earth, are doing their own thing, and the events of Man of Steel were so chaotic that it brought them all to the surface. So then they each have their own individual films, but then you get to a point where you get to a movie where they all have to come together, and that would have been your first Justice League movie. And then you would have, you know, that would have been just a good setup for Phase 1. And I really feel like you could have tied them all together in that way. Eventually you would have had your own next Man of Steel, big Superman type of movie where another great big threat comes. Maybe it's Brainiac or it's whoever. And he has to deal with it. And you just show, like, how insane this universe can potentially get. And I just wish they hadn't jumped so far into the future with Batman v Superman, because they ate up, I mean, a lot of people have already talked about this a lot, but they ate up so much of that story, like so many of the options. Like, you can now, I mean, Batman v Superman should have been their equivalent to Marvel's Civil War, which didn't come in until Phase 3 for them. You know what I'm saying? Like, that should have been a thing where they fell apart as the Justice League, and then Batman v Superman was its own story. And, I think that's how that should have gone. But, I probably could talk about that for a long time if I really wanted to. But I just, basically all I'm saying is I wish they had planned it better. I wish Zack Snyder wasn't really all that involved with it anymore. Like, he is an incredibly good visual artist, but he is a terrible storyteller. And without someone else there to kind of control him in that sense, then it doesn't really work as well. So that's kind of the basic subject I wanted to talk about. Now, if anybody wants to bring up some comments or questions, kind of addressing it, maybe what did you guys think? How would you want them to do it differently? I'd be open to talking about that. And if nobody gives a shit, we can just do some Q&A and call it a day. So what do you guys think? Let's start looking at some comments. Anybody? I apologize for the odd streaming time today, because I realized that I know it's like the middle of the day on a Monday, so this will mostly go out to Europeans. Oh, can you guys hear the Facebook messages? Yeah, that's my cohorts over at Game Society Pimps. Tell you what, I'm gonna close up Facebook there. Triple J, see you later. Oh, all right. How do I feel about Batman's prophetic visions of the future? Dude, that should not have been a thing. That should not have been in that movie. I mean, like, I get that they're trying to build up to something. They're obviously trying to build up to Justice League. We all know that. But, yeah, like, the way it's executed in that film, it just doesn't make much sense. It will probably make sense later, but, yeah, I don't know. Should you go watch the movie? I think you should watch it, but I would wait till supposedly they're going to release an R-rated cut, which it's not to say that you should see it because, oh, it'll be more violent. It's just that it seems like the R-rated cut is a half hour longer, and I'm assuming what was mostly cut from that film was story and character development. Like, I would love to know what Lex Luthor's motivations were in that movie because he was just an insane person for the sake of being an insane person. I mean, that movie, man, it's like I keep saying, there was just too much it was trying to accomplish all in one film, and it shouldn't have been that way. Why did Nolan stop making Batman movies? I'm sure it's because he kind of got tired of it. Like, so he did The Dark Knight, and that's a hard one to top. So when he got to Dark Knight Rising, you know, you can, what we know about that film's production background was that Man of Steel was written during the final scripting phase of Dark Knight Rising, and as a result, they focused less on Dark Knight Rising and more on the pre-production of Man of Steel. So I feel like he kind of got tired of working with the character, and he ended up just being more of a producer on Man of Steel. Superman Returns was the death of Superman, according to Square Breathing. I actually am going to defend Superman Returns. All right, so hear me out on this one. I'm not saying it's a good film. That's not my point. But it's a film that had to exist. Okay? And here's why. So Superman, back in the late 80s was, of course, you know, there was the Christopher Reeve run of films. And after Superman 4, DC actually lost the film option to it to this guy named John Peters. Kind of the way, it's a different situation, but kind of like the way Marvel doesn't have control of the X-Men movies or Fantastic Four movies or Spider-Man movies. The option was bought out by someone else briefly. So in the case of Superman, this guy John Peters had picked it up. And so Warner Brothers could not make another Superman movie until they made one with the consent of John Peters. So throughout all of the 90s, we didn't get one because there was the whole story about how he was going to make, what the hell was it? Superman Lives, the one that was written by Kevin Smith and all that. And that movie never came to be. So Superman Returns, not until 2006, when they finally talked him into making an even remotely accurate Superman movie. And I say that in heavy quotations because when you hear some of the things John Peters wanted to do with Superman, it was like, oh, he never wears the suit, he doesn't fly, he doesn't have powers. Like, it was just, that's not the character. So they finally talked him into a lot of the staples of Superman, and they had to essentially make this big budget film just to get the rights out of his hands. Like, they spent hundreds of millions of dollars to make that movie just so John Peters' one option on a film would go away. Which is why, one of the many reasons they never made a sequel to it. But it's also one of the reasons that movie is so, like, weird. Like, why he doesn't fight anybody, etc. is just because John Peters, man, he owned the rights to the character for one film, and that's he wouldn't let him do the stuff that they logically wanted to do. The other good thing about it, though, was that it unlocked the rights to all the Marlon Brando footage from Superman 2. In case you guys don't know this, when they filmed Superman 1 and 2, they did it together. It was, they had Richard Donner is the filmmaker. He made Superman 1. He had finished about 80% of Superman 2. And the studio came in and said, all right, we don't want Richard Donner's version of the movie because A, we don't like working with him. B, a lot of the actors in the film, particularly Marlon Brando, are extremely expensive. So if we don't use any of that footage, then we don't have to pay those people. We can get Richard Donner out of here. And so what they ended up doing was basically they rewrote the second film largely, and they reshot about 52% of it, something like that. And so all of this unused footage, especially all the Marlon Brando footage, was just sitting in vaults, but they couldn't technically use it for anything because they didn't pay the Brando estate. So when they got to Superman Returns, Bryan Singer really wanted to use some of the deleted Marlon Brando audio and video in the film. And so they, as part of that, they paid the Brando estate to unlock the footage. And by doing that, they were allowed to then use the footage to make what we now know to be Superman 2, the Richard Donner cut, which honestly is the best Superman movie of that original era. The only one that I think is possibly a better film is Man of Steel, but that's obviously highly debatable. So that's why I forgive Superman Returns, because it unlocked Superman 2, the Richard Donner cut, and it got it basically got Superman out of the hands of a fucked up kooky dude, as Kevin Smith once referred to him. So let's take some other questions here. Who else wants to? Don't know if there's a game based on this movie, but if there had been, what kind of would you like to see? What movie? Actually, one other thing I want to talk about, I guess, if we're talking about cinematic universes, is people forget that the current DC cinematic universe is actually their third attempt at a cinematic universe. Their first one was with Batman Begins. It was kind of unintentional, but the plan was to have, Batman movies, and then they were going to have Superman movies that tied in. I mean, that's part of the motivation behind Superman Returns. It was like, we have to make this, but hopefully we can make one that's successful, and then we can just go forward with it. Since Superman Returns wasn't that successful, they just washed their hands of it, but they kept going with Batman. And of course, Dark Knight was like one of the biggest hits ever. So they basically had to just sit and finish this trilogy before they could start building another universe. Then they started the new universe with Green Lantern. Well, we all know how that turned out. So that was like a one and done in that universe. And so then you get to the third attempt at the universe, which was Man of Steel. And there was, believe it or not, there was a brief phase there where we weren't sure if the Nolan Batman trilogy and Man of Steel were in the same universe, because DC was still not really sure themselves. And then we got to a point in the production of Batman v Superman where they actually tried to see if Christian Bale would be interested in being Batman, and that way they could kind of retroactively add 3 movies to their cinematic universe, but it didn't pan out. And I guess that kind of makes sense, because you couldn't really add that Batman into the Batman v Superman universe because of the ending of Dark Knight Rises. It would have been, you could have theoretically brought Batman back, but you couldn't really bring Bruce Wayne back. Which is another thing people have pointed out about the idiocy that occurs in Batman v Superman. Spoiler alert, massive spoiler alert if you haven't seen the film. Superman dies in the movie, and then that's fine because he's going to come back. We all know that. But they also killed off Clark Kent. Well, he can't come back because that's just a character he plays, essentially. And he's supposed to be human, so it's really fucking stupid. And that's what this whole thing is about, is just venting my frustration that they didn't plan out that universe better. And I swear, man, if I was working at Warner Brothers, if I had that kind of power, I would just be like, here's a float chart, basically, of like, I'm not going to tell you what each of your movies have to be, but I will tell you, like, this one has to be here, this one has to be here, this one has to be here, and they have to connect in this small way. Now go out and make your film. You have to actually kind of have a plan going forward. And if you have Zack Snyder being the guy who seems to be planning out that universe, then there is no plan. If you listen to a lot of his interviews, he fundamentally doesn't understand the characters. He'll just have them do things in the moment that he thinks are cool. Like, Superman, of course, is supposed to be a character that doesn't kill people. Like, that's supposed to be a big rule, which is one of the things at the end of Man of Steel, when he kills Zod, it's supposed to be like this big thing for him to, like, it took a lot for him to kill that guy. Then you're into, like, a minute or two of Batman v Superman, and he just fucking kills a regular dude. Like, Zack Snyder's like, oh, he didn't kill him, he just tackled him. It's like, yeah, but physics. He tackled the guy through a wall. Superman, the most powerful entity ever, tackles a human being through a concrete wall. The guy doesn't live. And that's an example of Zack Snyder does something cool in the moment that doesn't ultimately make sense for the characters. And that makes me sad. I was really hoping the influence of Ben Affleck, as well as I forget his name, but the guy who wrote Argo. I mean, don't forget Ben Affleck was the director of Argo. I was really hoping that team together on the film would make that film more cohesive. But damn, man, they really should not have jumped that gun yet. They really should have built that shit up properly, because now you have a very shaky foundation for a cinematic universe, and it wasn't smart the way they did it. I guess that's all I'm saying, and I wish, not that I would have had the power to do so, but I wish I could have fixed that. If they somehow saw this stream and ever thought, well, that guy, maybe for some reason we want to hire him, that'd be nice, but I can't imagine that would ever be their conclusion. But if they did, I would I would desperately go in, be like, all right, here's my plan, but we got to figure out a way to just delete Batman v Superman from continuity. Kind of the way X-Men Days of Future Past essentially deleted everything that had almost entirely occurred, because, well, there's a whole long story behind how Fox totally ruined the X-Men franchise under this. They had this one guy who was like the head of production there, the head of the studio. He came in after X-Men 2. He had nothing to do with that. And all of the really like bad ones were made under his watch. And it wasn't really until he left that they were able to bring Bryan Singer back to fix X-Men. Now, granted, X-Men First Class was actually a really cool movie, but aside from that, this guy had like terrible ideas. He's also the guy who like greenlit Fantastic Four, but he also was the guy who fought hard against Avatar and Titanic. Like, the guy didn't know what the fuck he's doing. So he's now like the head of Sony, apparently, or one of the heads of Sony, and now he's apparently one of the guys who fucked up the Ghostbusters cinematic universe. So imagine a Michael Bay or Uwe Boll cinematic universe. Wow. That's a hard call. I essentially would get what you're saying. You're thinking, like, which one is the worst of those two? Clearly, Michael Bay has a more talented production team. He clearly has a better budget. I won't divulge any names, but I have friends who worked on some of his films, and they all say he's a spaz. Like, there's a scene, they shot Transformers 3 here in Chicago, and I had friends who worked on it, and one of the things they said about Michael Bay is, like, some of the scenes, they aren't planned, like, really at all. Like, they'll come in, the big production team is there, but they have no idea what Michael's going to want to do. They have a vague idea of what the script is, and then they'll come in, or Michael Bay will show up, and he'll be like, all right, you'll play a character with 1, 2, and 3, and you play characters 4, 5, and 6, and go. And he'll literally be on set for 15 minutes. He's like, all right, great, done, one take, I'm out. And then he gets in a limo and leaves. Like, he doesn't really seem to direct much. Uwe Boll, on the other hand, I guess he cares about his movies, even if they're almost all totally unwatchable. The thing is, Uwe Boll movies, you have to go into with an understanding that it's going to be one of the worst things you've ever seen. But if you understand that, it can actually be really funny. My favorite, by far, is House of the Dead, as one of the most unbelievably bad films ever. But it's got this perfect, like, wave formation of, like, it starts off like really dumb, but you're like, all right, this is stupid, I'm losing interest, and then something crazy will happen, you're like, okay, I'll sit around for a little bit longer, and then that'll keep happening. You'll be interested for a bit, and then it'll dip, and then it'll bring you back with something nuts. And but that was just that film. The best part of Uwe Boll movies, though, are the commentary tracks. Oh man, he thinks his films are brilliant films, and he will openly insult people who worked on them who didn't share his vision or whatever. Like, I kind of remember, all right, so there was a movie called Alone in the Dark, obviously based on the video game. And that movie had Tara Reid in it. You guys remember her? Hey, Ronald, what's up? He's going to go watch Far Cry again? I never saw that one. But yeah, so he did, sorry, we're talking about Alone in the Dark. So Tara Reid's in that movie, right? And there's a point where he starts talking about Tara. He's like, oh, Tara Reid, she's a huge whore. She was sleeping with everyone. She throws herself at me. I say, no, I don't want that. I just want to make my film. I only care about my film. But she is a whore. Or, like, you're like, all right. And then, like, I think it was a movie, Blood Rain? It had Michael Madsen in it, and he's like, oh, Michael Madsen, he's a terrible actor, he's always drunk all the time, but the studio they make me use him is awful, etc. And I'm just like, this guy is nuts. Like, that's the best part of an Uwe Boll movie, is just watching it with commentary, because the guy really believes he's, like, amazing. And he's the only filmmaker I've ever seen who thinks his films are flawless, beautiful, perfect works of art. Like, any good filmmaker will tell you that they're never satisfied with what they make. But that's the only guy I know who thinks his films are flawless, and that's, well, because they're terrible. What would happen if Adam Sandler was either Batman or Superman? I would just assume it was a parody. Adam Sandler has a really bad rap for a lot of reasons, but he is actually a talented actor when you see him in dramatic roles, the few that he ever gets to do. Like Reign Over Me, he was really good in that. But the problem with those movies is they don't make any money because people don't want to. People inherently assume Adam Sandler, silly comedy, may not even be funny, but it's silly. That's what I want to go see. So they don't go to see the dramatic ones he's done. But it is what it is. Did I ever watch Smallville? Yes, I have the whole series. I got the first 4 seasons on DVD, and then I got seasons 6 through 10 on Blu-ray, and I have season 5 on the ill-fated HD DVD. There was never a Blu-ray release of season 5, so yeah, I've got the whole series, which is really cool. Although I don't even remember how I did this back in the day, but like, if you know how, you can rip HD DVDs and then convert them to Blu-rays. It's a pain in the ass. I haven't done it in years. That was like the only thing I ever needed to do it with, because that was like a good solid release that never saw a Blu-ray version and likely never will. So there you go. Pixels. I never saw Pixels. I kind of wish I had, not in theaters certainly. I guess I still could, but everyone says it's like one of the worst films ever. Do I like the Avengers movies? Yes, I do. I like the first one a lot better. I feel like the second one was just, they did it because they had to do it, and that Joss Whedon was kind of burned out. But when you watch that film, you can tell, especially with the Thor stuff, that the film was too long and the studio kind of intervened a bit, because it seems like there was a lot more going on that the studio forced him to remove. I don't think Joss Whedon's that great of an individual, but as a filmmaker, he's pretty good, and it seems very unlikely he would have made such a incohesive story in that regard, like especially regarding Thor. So I feel like Kevin Smith would have put heart and soul into the storylines. Thoughts? I feel like Kevin Smith would have done a good job writing those films. I don't think he would have done a great job directing those films. By his own admission, he's not very good with action scenes. He said this multiple times. Now, maybe he's grown as a filmmaker in that sense, but I can only attest to what he has said previously, which is that he doesn't really like to do action scenes. And you have to have a certain type of patience for action scenes, because they just involve so much work just to get even a moment or two. And he says he doesn't really like to do it that way. Kevin Smith would probably be a very good Kevin Feige-like person to work for Warner Brothers, where he's like, look, I'll just tell you what you have to have happening in place. I mean, don't forget, this dude is a guy who built his own cinematic universe before cinematic universes were a thing. Now, granted, they all revolved around like Jay and Silent Bob and like, the town of, what was it, Red Bank, I think. He made a universe where all these movies separately function, but they all have ties to each other in one way or another. And I feel like he could have been good as that guy for Warner Brothers, where he doesn't actually make the films. He also knows the characters pretty well, and he just kind of, he says like, all right, make sure that this movie achieves this and this achieves this and it takes place here, etc., etc. He would have been perfect for that role. Are the Iron Man movies done? I mean, probably, because Robert Downey Jr. is just so damn expensive. But we'll see. I mean, it depends. I would assume that he's just going to pop up in things like, obviously he's in Civil War, and I'm sure he'll be in the next Avengers, the Infinity one, but I wouldn't be surprised if he dies in that, just because they don't want to keep paying him because he's so damn expensive. We are getting a third Thor movie, Thor Ragnarok. I haven't seen any of the shows, the recent ones, like Green Arrow. Is that even still on? Flash, I haven't seen. I haven't watched any of that stuff, like Daredevil. Granted, that's Marvel. I haven't watched any of that stuff yet. I need to. I want to. I just never do it. Yeah, Ultron was definitely set up for the Infinity War. Kick-Ass is a cool superhero film. My favorite Star Wars movie. I'm gonna go with Return of the Jedi still. I want to talk about Star Wars, but I'll save that for another video. I don't want to do that in this one because I'm not going to talk about it right now. I'll do that another time. Another live broadcast. If you guys like this, we'll do that. Did I see Jungle Book? No, I have not. I assume you're talking about the new one. No, I have not. I actually very rarely get to go out to a movie theater and see anything, just because I work too much, so I don't end up having a lot of time. Plus, to be honest, movie tickets are really expensive, so it's just, they keep going up, and we're at a point where you can almost buy the Blu-ray for the same price as one admission, and it's just like, I'll just wait, especially now that the Blu-rays come out so much sooner than they used to. Like, Force Awakens came out in December to theaters, and then you were able to buy the Blu-ray in April. There was a time, for those of you who don't know this, if you're younger, there was a time a movie would come out in theaters, and the DVD, or even back then the VHS, wouldn't come out until over a year later. Like, it would take a long time, and movies would stick around in theaters for a long time. Do you guys know Revenge of the Sith was in theaters for a full year? I mean, it's just, and that was only 10 years ago, 11 years ago. You're like, all right. And now they're only in theaters for a few months. What about the correlation of Superman dying by kryptonite spear like in DC Online? I didn't know that happened in DC Online. I think, again, the ending of that movie should have been like 10 movies later. Like, there should have been a different film, almost the equivalent of Civil War, that Marvel's Civil War, that should have been for DC, in which Superman goes down, or you have the whole Doomsday scenario on its own as its own film. I mean, I can't tell you how much that film pisses me off, because it screwed up the entire cinematic universe, and it pissed away a lot of the best storylines that exist, all in one film that in of itself wasn't even that good, which is really upsetting. Greetings, everyone. If you're joining us now, because I know a lot of you, we're at 110 people watching. Thanks, by the way. The whole point of this particular live stream is that I wanted to talk about the DC Cinematic Universe, the state of it. I'm obviously not going to go over that again. This video will be uploaded to YouTube directly if you guys decide you want to see it later. And the idea is that I want to do live shows occasionally where I basically have some sort of subject that generally is not video game related, and just kind of talk to you guys about it, see what you guys think about it, and then after we go through that, just do some Q&A and then call it a day. If you guys like this, I'll do it more often. If you hate it, this might be the only one we ever do. But the next one I would want to do, I will just say now, would be on Star Wars. Am I going to do a third gen recap? I did. You're welcome. That's been out for a while, actually. That came out like in, what was it, like August? Yeah, no, September, October, somewhere in there. Maybe I think it was October. Never mind. Will Zod return? No. I mean, what was left of him was thrown into Doomsday. Martha. All right, so here's the thing about the Martha thing. When I saw that in theaters, that actually kind of worked on me, and the reason it worked on me is because it never occurred to me that both Clark and Bruce, both of their mothers happen to be named Martha. That actually was one of the few moments that like legit was like, oh, all right, that was like a cleverly written concept. However, it was not executed well. That's the problem. It came off more like that scene in Step Brothers where the two of them are. You guys seen that Will Ferrell film and John C. Reilly, where they're just like, all right, real quick, what's your favorite thing or whatever? And then they both say the same thing, and they're like, did we just become best friends? Yep. That's how that moment came off to me, because that's an example of where I think the guy who wrote Argo, not Ben Affleck, although obviously he was involved heavily in this film. Don't forget, Argo was the best picture, and the two people most responsible for making that film were very important and integral people in this film. And I think that that was something that on paper worked really well, and they no doubt had a plan for like how to deliver that so that it made sense. But because Zack Snyder is more of a visual guy as opposed to a storyteller, it came off more like the scene from Step Brothers, and that's why I think a lot of people are making fun of it. Step Brothers 2, a lot of people have been talking about that, but I heard that was debunked as not a real thing. Yes, new Godzilla film. I was just asked. I didn't even know they were making another one. I mean, I thought that the new one would have had some tie to the previous one that we got 2 years ago. The new one is a Japanese film, and that excites me a lot because you guys may not know this. I'm a huge Godzilla fan. I've seen every one of those films multiple times, even the hard ones, because a lot of them were never released here. Like Godzilla 1985 was originally Return of Godzilla. I've managed to track down like multiple copies and multiple cuts and everything just to make sure I have all the versions. So I'm very excited about the new one. Although I won't lie, I already forgot the name of it. But I don't know if it's going to come out in theaters here because the trailer I saw looked like it was pretty much only aimed at a Japanese release in theaters. I assume we'll just get the DVD and Blu-ray version here. I guess Laughs is asking when will the normal Q&A be. I guess we can just start doing that now. So yeah, whatever. Q&A. Yeah, go ahead. Somebody movies and games asks, is he the only person that likes Batman Begins more than Dark Knight? You're not the only one. I have a friend who's exactly the same way. I think Batman Begins is a very solid film. I have a strong connection to it, of course, because it was shot here in Chicago. But Dark Knight I just prefer. It's just a better film in a lot of ways to me. And that one also shot in Chicago. But as someone who lives in Chicago, I can tell you the geography. Not that this matters because it takes place in the city of Gotham City, of course. But the geography of Dark Knight is much more accurate. Whereas the geography of Batman Begins is very made up. Like, there is no island like that where you could isolate people. And that always... Because I would recognize the scenery and know that I'm looking at something incorrect. And that's always kind of taken me a little bit out of Batman Begins. But yeah. Did I dislike the Star Wars prequels? I actually talked about that on the last live show. I'm one of the few people that will defend the Star Wars prequels for a multitude of reasons. But they're by no means great films. Yeah, there's no reason to go into that whole thing again. King Kong versus Godzilla, that's not even a fight. Like, Godzilla's like, he's like an indestructible being. It's like 400 feet tall. King Kong's like an oversized gorilla who's like, what, 50 feet? The only way that they even compete is when you cheat to make that possible. Ronald says, hey, Adam, enjoyed the Q&As. Keep them coming. What's my favorite movie in the DC universe? Well, technically, there's only 2 films in the DC universe at the moment, so de facto, it has to go to Man of Steel. If you're including literally any movie that DC has ever had their name on, maybe Superman 2, the Richard Donner cut, or Man of Steel, depending on the day. If we want to go through... So let's think about that real quick. There's all the Richard Donner era Superman movies. So that would be 5. Superman 1, 2, 3, 4, and then Superman 2, the Richard Donner cut. Of those, I'm going to go Superman 2. Then you have like the Tim Burton, Joel Schumacher era Batman films. I'm going to say something unpopular. My favorite one of those is Batman Returns. I know a lot of people say Batman 89 is the best one. I always preferred Batman Returns, even though it's a very strange movie. Then there's always the off ones like Green Lantern, which was not very good. Then there's things like V for Vendetta, which was quite good. There's the Nolan trilogy, which would be my favorite one, would be The Dark Knight. You know what? I think I'm gonna say the best film with DC's name on it is probably The Dark Knight. I think that's what I'm gonna vote. So yeah, I wanted to say Man of Steel originally, but I kind of forgot for a second that Dark Knight existed, so I'm gonna go with that. Bob Duck asks, do I like anime? No. I've never gotten into it. I've never had any interest in it. And anytime I've ever watched it, I just get like an immediate headache. I can't process anime. Nothing against people who love anime, because I know people do, and I know you guys love it. A lot of you do, but I've never been interested into it. And I love cartoons, but anime has just never ever worked for me. I can't take it seriously, and it physically hurts my mind every time I look at the animation style. And I know that's not a popular opinion, but it's kind of like, to me, it's kind of like staring into the Virtual Boy. It just immediately hurts. Is the Lobo movie really happening? My buddy Shen Muso asks. I don't know. I would hope so. You would think after the success of Deadpool that would be an obvious move for DC. But if we know anything about this discussion thus far, DC doesn't do the obvious moves, like hiring somebody to make sure their cinematic universe goes somewhere, has a plan, and makes sense. Wonder Woman was one of the highlights of... I'm reading a comment. Wonder Woman was one of the comments of Batman v Superman. Are you excited for the standalone Wonder Woman film? I personally think they picked the wrong actress to play her. I am not excited about that film at all. She should have not had anything to do with Batman v Superman. I mean, I'm projecting my own vision for the DC universe onto it. I know I should separate that to what they actually did make. I know that's not really fair of me. But, no, to be honest, I'm not really that interested in that film. I will see it, but probably not in theaters. Unless, like, we just see some amazing trailers where we're like, shit, I take it back. I gotta go see that. Did I prefer Jeremy Irons to Michael Caine, or the other way around? God, that's a tough one. I think Michael Caine did a better conventional Alfred. Jeremy Irons was clearly playing the new badass Alfred. Like, that version of Alfred seems like a guy who goes out and, like, cuts people's throats in a jungle. Although, ironically, I think that was actually something that Michael Caine's Alfred was suggested to have done in the Dark Knight trilogy. Superman can definitely work. It's just the problem with everyone they throw Superman at, they don't know enough about the character. They never really want to explore it. I mean, they even clearly the direction that the current DC universe is going with Superman is they just want to make him a source of antagony. Like, they just want him to be the constant threat. I mean, every movie thus far has been like, he's a threat to us. Like, even the trailer for Suicide Squad talks about how he's an imminent threat. What if he came out and just took the president? Because they don't know how to write him as anything other than like just a problem for all the other characters. And that sucks because it means they just don't understand him, and they really should have people who understand that character. He's an extremely fascinating and extremely awesome character, but they just don't seem to ever understand how to present him. And that's unfortunate because clearly DC has a lot of good writers in the comics division, in the television department, and in the even those like made for DVD and Blu-ray movies. They clearly have people who understand the character, but they never give one of those guys a job working for the film division. I don't understand why. Would I watch a Shenmue anime? No. I love Shenmue, but no. Do you think zoo animals will kill us all? I find that unlikely. Although you guys, I'm sure, saw that thing about the chimp in Japan that escaped and was just like going after people, but they took it down pretty quick. Do I think Jared Leto will play a good Joker? Probably. He has extremely tough shoes to fill, with Heath Ledger being the most recent example. But it's like, what are you gonna do, man? That's another reason that they decided against using the Nolan films in the current DCU, was because it would have cut off certain characters, particularly the Joker, who could never have been present in there, which would have been impossible. I mean, theoretically, the Joker can just be an idea. I mean, maybe they could have made that work. I don't know. But they didn't do that, so it doesn't matter. Did I work on Batman Begins? No, man. I was in high school when that film came out. I did work a little bit on The Dark Knight, but like, it's not even worth acknowledging. So, yeah. Hire the Smallville writers. Smallville is interesting because those people, like, if you watch interviews with them, they never thought the series would end up being that successful. So they thought that they could just do like 1 or 2 seasons of it and just kind of, they wouldn't have to deal with problems later. Like, for example, that whole series, Clark walks around without glasses. And when asked, like, hey, when he eventually becomes Superman and he goes to the Daily Planet, how's he going to just suddenly need glasses and nobody who knows him as Clark is going to also recognize him as Superman? And their answer was, fortunately, we'll never get that far, so it's never going to be our problem. And then, ironically, they did get that far, and they did have to figure out a solution. But I just wish that DC had writers with the ability to project into the future, to just think about what they're doing. Because at the moment, the only studio that has that is Disney. And they're good at it. They are really good at it, because they have Marvel Studios who they basically tell, like, look, here's a basic plan. Make sure you build a universe. Go. Have fun. Same thing with Star Wars. They went to Lucasfilm. They don't interfere. They just tell them, like, make sure you build this up to something. Go. That's what you need. But they have these people who just interfere and don't really know what they're doing. Dude, I was less than a PA. I wasn't even that. I was a guy who just kind of stood there and made sure people didn't walk onto the set. And we're talking from a distance, a very large distance. It's not even worth acknowledging. I did it volunteer too, because I was going to film school at the time. And so I was just like, they just needed people to just kind of be there just to make sure random people didn't walk onto the streets they had closed off. I didn't see anything interesting, other than, you guys remember in The Dark Knight when they're driving and the fire trucks are all lit up? I got to see that from a very far distance, and that's about it. What do I think about the Super Smash Brothers series? I like it, although honestly I haven't really played it much in years. I think the one I only ever played intensely was the N64 version, but that was a long time ago. The other ones I've only kind of played like a little bit. You've yet to see Batman versus Superman. Should you wait for the Blu-ray? Yeah, or supposedly they're going to release the half-hour longer R-rated cut in theaters to make up some more of the money. You might see that if you don't want to buy it on Blu-ray, but that's up to you. If you're thinking about buying it, just buy it on Blu-ray. My favorite superhero is Superman, which is another reason that it upsets me that they never get him right. No, I never saw Christian Bale freaking out. That was Terminator Salvation that he freaked out on. Uh, my favorite TV show? That's a tough one. Nothing that I'm watching currently. I mean, if we're talking about all times, things like South Park or Lost, a lot of the Star Trek stuff's really good. Um, do I have a console or console you do not have that you want to get? Probably the Neo Geo CD, but that's just because I've never had one. Like there's like iterations of other consoles where it would be cool to have them, like repainted ones or whatever like that, but they're not brand new consoles, if that makes sense. So I guess if, of a console I have no version of, I guess it would be the Neo Geo CD. Will we ever see more Metal Gear Solid games? Probably, but probably not the way we want. Don't be surprised if we get like Metal Gear Solid Mobile and it's just free to play bullshit. Because without Hideo Kojima there's no reason that Konami is going to respect that IP, assuming they do anything with it at all. I think they will, just because it's a name. I think they can at least get one or two games out there just to trick people before they finally ruin the franchise forever. Seems that DC, I'm reading a quote, it seems DC can't compete with Marvel. Is it lack of funds or lack of vision? Definitely lack of vision. Lack of funds is not a problem. See, studios have what they call tentpole franchises, where they're big things they rely on to bring a lot of income. And Warner Brothers has always been very good at that. I mean, their most recent one was the Harry Potter franchise. And I think most of us would agree that's a very well put together franchise. Even if you didn't like the story, the fact that they were like, all right, we'll always get the same actors, we'll plan this out, blah, blah, blah. But people forget that J.K. Rowling, the author of those series, had a big hand in that role. Like, just being like, make sure you do it this way, make sure that it connects to this in this way, etc. DC currently has no one like that. There is no role. There's no one there telling them which direction they should go. And that becomes really evident when you hear about, all right, so like they're doing the Aquaman movie, right? The guy who did Aquaman had to actually distance himself from the Batman v Superman movie, being like, my movie has nothing to do with that. Like, he saw it in theaters with everyone else and went, wow, mine's not going to connect to this film at all. And that just tells you, like, you can't have all these random filmmakers just making some movie with the character and then hope that it all, like, connects together. That doesn't make any fucking sense. So, yeah, it just upsets me that they can't seem to get that shit working. What are my opinions on the J.J. Abrams Star Trek movies? Am I excited to see the new one? Really liked Star Trek '09, even though it made me sad, because I remember seeing that in theaters being like, you have to understand, when I saw Star Trek '09, I had just finished, for the first time ever, watching every Star Trek episode that had ever been made. Like, and I mean all the shows, including the fucking animated show. And so I was super excited that there was going to be a new movie. And I went into it being like, I really hope this isn't just like a high school themed like reboot, like that doesn't make any, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just like Saved by the Bell, the new class. Like, I didn't want it to be that, but with Star Trek characters. And it didn't disappoint in that regard. It did a very good job of keeping the story that had already existed chronologically there. It kept it, it was canon, but at the same time, it did what it had to, which was to essentially erase all of that to make new films possible. So I actually respected it a lot for being able to do that. It essentially destroyed the history of Star Trek while making a new one. But it was okay for it to do it that way. And I thought that was great because it opened up a path for all sorts of new stories. Then the second one, they just went ahead and made Wrath of Khan again, but not as well. And I think that was just JJ kind of caving to pressure, because a lot of fans basically said, oh, that's what we want Wrath of Khan, and he should not have listened to them. Because fans will say a lot of things because they don't really understand what they actually want until they see it, and they go, that actually isn't what I wanted. And that was the case with Into Darkness. It just wasn't the movie that should have happened. You know, like you've now opened up the path for infinite storylines, and what'd you do? You made the same movie again. It wasn't smart. And it also didn't even make sense with timelines. Like, you know, just because you deleted the previous timeline does not mean Ricardo Montalban is suddenly, you know, Cumberbatch. I forgot the was it Michael Cumberbatch? I forget his name. Benedict. Why did I say Michael? Benedict Cumberbatch. He can't change ethnicities. You know what I mean? Like that doesn't work that way. So that movie was not as well planned out as it needed to be. So, and then the third one, I thought the trailer for that was awful. Like it was a joke. And as it turns out, a lot of people reacted to it the same way. They're actually filming reshoots of it and adding a whole new character because test screenings apparently were not good. So we will see. But I forget who's actually directing the third one. But yeah, we'll see. What do I think about the new Star Trek All Access TV? Or, like, you have to be a CBS All Access member to watch the new Star Trek show. I don't know enough about it. I think it's odd that it's not coming to television or some other type of streaming service that isn't like that. But, you know, I can't speak to what the show itself will be. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. I know a lot of you keep asking about Force Awakens. I really want to talk about it. Trust me, I do. But that could be its own video, and I think it will be. I think I'll do that on its own. But I will say that I'm excited about I'm excited about the future of Star Wars. I think under Disney thus far, it has been very good, and that's all I'm gonna say. Do I like the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies? I like the first two. The third one, first time I saw that, just the sadness inside, man. I've since grown to like it more just because the disappointment is all gone, which is kind of the same thing that happened with Batman v Superman. Like that. If I hadn't seen some of those trailers that just ruined that movie, then I would have come out of Batman v Superman just fucking pissed off and angry, and I would have really hated it. But since they ruined almost everything in the trailer, it's hard to be disappointed at that point. You just go, well, okay, I guess it is exactly what they said it was going to be, which was mediocrity, and chaos. Who's the guy at Marvel that's putting everything together? The guy's name is Kevin Feige. Like I keep saying, there is nobody at DC with that role currently. Elder Scrolls or Fallout? Elder Scrolls. If you guys know, I make a show on my other channel called Game Society Pimps. The show is Skyrim for Pimps. It's kind of a pride and joy of mine because I got to be... That's the only show I've ever been able to be the guy who kind of decides the fate of the cinematic universe. Like, we started off with a simple Let's Play, right? And we started building characters, building up a universe. And I thought, well, you know what? Let's tie everything together. Let's do it like this and do it like that and actually have a planned direction. And so if you really watch that show, you'll see it. And I'm very proud of that. But I never really get to do that in any other field. So I want to in the future on other projects. Who knows? But for now, that's my example. Although there's something else in the works, but I can't talk about it currently. Will we ever see single-player DLC for GTA 5? Isn't there some? But, I mean, like, extra cars and stuff? I don't know if there's, like worthwhile expansions. I don't follow GTA enough to know. Am I going to see Suicide Squad? Yes, I am. It looks amusing. We also know that they have done reshoots since, or are intending to do reshoots since Batman v Superman, but they announced that so quickly, it's hard to believe it's actually tied to Batman v Superman. Reshoots are a common thing, and they're always a good thing. It means that they are aware there's a problem, and they want to fix it. Whereas they could just cheap out and not fix it. So it sounds like a bad thing, but if they go ahead and fix it, you'll never know. Unless it's like the Fantastic Four reshoots, where they get Kate Mara to just wear a wig from one shot, and then like have her natural hair in other shots and stuff. Ugh. I totally agree that the Batman v Superman trailer just is the movie. It totally wrecked it. And yeah, no, it sucks. I mean, it tells you everything that's going to occur. There's almost no shock moments. And the one shock moment that does happen has been made fun of to death with, like I said before, like the Step Brothers comparison. If Batman v Superman made a shovelware game, would you add it to your collection? It depends on the platform, I guess. I mean, there's plenty of Superman and Batman games for many consoles I own that I don't have those games. And I don't get them just for the sake of that. You know, like, oh, look, a Superman game on Super Nintendo. I should get it. Like, I don't have, like, I think it's Death and Return of Superman on Super Nintendo. I don't have that, even though I love Superman. Any other short burst questions, guys? Why Doomsday this early? I completely agree. They completely wrecked that. That should have been like the end of their Phase 3 film. You know? That should not have been the ending of the second movie. That was unbelievably dumb. What do I think of PS4K? I did a whole video on that, dude. Sorry. I've got coffee in my Force Awakens thermos thing. Pretty good. Am I the ultimate '90s kid? I don't know. How would you define that? Have I played any of the Kirby games? Yeah, I used to love the, especially the ones on the original Game Boy. Just Kirby's Dream Land, Kirby's Dream Land 2. I played the shit out of those. I haven't really played much since. What do I think of Smash Bros. As a competitive esport? Great idea. I'm all for esports. I think that's really cool. I actually got to go to one esport event was last year, like January 2015. I got to go to Atlanta to see the Smite esports event. That was really cool. They flew us all down just to attend. It was really nice. Aquaman or Submariner? Shut up, Aaron. You'll have to find out when a certain video comes out. What about Shenmue 3? Yeah, I want it to come out. I would play it. Bulls jersey makes... Ironically, that's actually... Alright, so I was asked, the Bulls jersey in the background makes me think of the 90s. Well, that's actually a Derrick Rose jersey, who is a current member. It's signed by him, actually. Pepsi or Coke? That's actually a surprisingly interesting discussion. So when I was growing up, it was all Pepsi. Pepsi all the way. And however, I live in the United States, like I'm sure a bunch of you actually do. In the United States, we don't use sugar in our sodas. We use high fructose corn syrup, which is not really food. It's not really something human beings are meant to eat. It's actually illegal in most countries. But we use it anyway. In fact, the only other country I know of that uses it is Slovakia. But anyway, so they do it to make the product cheaper, right? But that affects the taste of it. With high fructose corn syrup, Pepsi tastes a lot better. But when you go with raw sugar, or the kind of sugar that they used to use, so for example, we now know it more in the US as Mexican Coke, that stuff, oh my God, is way better than the high fructose Pepsi, and it's a lot better than the sugar Pepsi. The best Coke I have ever had in my life was in Germany. Coca-Cola in Germany, for some reason, is amazing. It's the best Coca-Cola I've ever had. For some reason, it was Germany, and I had it there a few times, and I was like, yeah, all right, Coca-Cola in Germany, best Coke ever. So there you go. If we're talking about the way it's supposed to be with the original sugar, then Coca-Cola. If we are sticking with high fructose, I'm going Pepsi. There you go. Am I excited for Nintendo NX? I don't have enough information to be excited yet. I mean, if it's an all-digital platform, I'm never acquiring it, so we'll see. Will I make reviews on VR sets? No. Most of them are for PC only. I don't PC game. There's the PS4 version that's coming. Maybe I'll get that, but I honestly don't. I'm really not that interested in VR. What would I recommend first, getting a Sega CD or 32X? Well, a 32X is substantially cheaper, but there's nothing on there really that you're going to be too interested in playing, probably. So a Sega CD has a more interesting library, but getting one is much harder. Virtual Boy versus Wii. I'm going to go with the Wii, which sounds odd, I know, from me. It's just the Virtual Boy, even though I think I'm sure some of the games on there are actually fun, but first of all, I don't own a Virtual Boy. I had one and I gave it to my buddy Ben Shenmue, so he was watching before. But he tuned out, it seems like. But I just can't physically play it. Like I'll be in looking at the screen, and it'll really hurt like really quick, and so I can't get through a game, even though the games themselves are probably fine. Have I been watching Star Wars Rebels? No, not yet, but I really want to. I try not to watch a show until the show is completed, just because I like to be able to watch the whole thing in marathon. I don't really like to wait for a long time between cliffhangers and stuff like that. Do I watch boxing or MMA? No, the only sport I ever really watch, although I didn't really watch it this year, is the NBA basketball. Because of Chicago hometown pride, anytime one of our teams is like looks like they could win something, like the Blackhawks, who knows? They won the Stanley Cup last year. They might win it this year, although they're not doing very well at the moment. I would watch some of that, but that's about it. It's not so much that people are saying I look exhausted. It's mostly the bad lighting with the shitty webcam. It looks like I'm just sweating intensely, but I'm not. I am getting a little bit tired, but that's why I got coffee. Although I'll keep it real with you guys. I'm probably not going to go for much longer. GameCube or Wii U? It's a good question. I don't know. It depends on when you ask me. Like, right now I'm leaning towards GameCube. Tomorrow I might be like, why did I say GameCube? Wii U. That's a decision I'm gonna have to make another time, I think. Do I collect video game or / nerdy artwork? I have movie posters like all over my apartment, but that's about it. Do I like Ratchet and Clank like as a series? I haven't really played it that much. I got nothing against it. I want to. I think I bought I don't even remember the PS3 re-releases. So I'll play that at some point. Do I think Metro will be a launch title for NX? I would find that unlikely just because we've heard nothing about that. At least I know I haven't. But then again, Nintendo is exactly the kind of company that's pretty good at keeping a secret, so who knows. Do I think Crash Bandicoot will come back? Yeah, probably. Dreamcast or Saturn? Come on, dude. Dreamcast. You're asking me? Am I going to Gamescom this year? No. Do I play retro games? Yes. What music do you dig? I don't really listen to much music, but when I do, it's usually like movie themes and stuff. I think one of the greatest pieces of music ever created was John Williams' Superman score. All of his work on Star Wars as well. I listen to that. I don't really listen to much, and I have no idea who a popular musician is right now. I know people will be like, I know Justin Bieber is a person. I know Taylor Swift is a person. But if you played their music, I could never tell you it was them. I do not care. Thoughts on cartridges on the NX? I think people misinterpret the idea that they might be using cartridges because people think of cartridges and they think, oh, look, N64 cartridges. That's a different technology that's archaic and they would never come back to. However, using something like what the 3DS uses, which is essentially a glorified SD card, that is possible. I could see them doing that. Because especially if they believe that there will be some sort supposedly the NX will be both portable and a home console or like two different things that are connected in some way. So the idea would be potentially you buy this, let's call it a cartridge, even though I hate using that term, but you buy it and you play it in the home console version. You could then take it out and pop it in the handheld version. So a little SD sized cartridge would make sense for that. I'm not. No, trust me. I've heard both the Superman. All right, Michael is saying if I hum Superman and Indiana Jones, I guarantee I'll screw it up. Nope, nope. I would get that one right. Why do I always address my fans while live streaming? Sorry, would you guys like me to not talk to you? I'm quoting. I have the original 1977 Star Wars vinyl. It's pretty badass. I bet. I don't own much in the way of vinyl. The only vinyls are records. I'm not even sure what term to call it because I know every time I call it one of these words, I call it a record. I call it a vinyl. I call it a 45, which is an archaic term. Somebody always yells at me and says, that's not the right word. So I don't know. But you guys know what I'm talking about. Big black round discs that play music. I have only a handful of those, and they're all video game themed ones that I was buying just as a collector's thing. And then a really cool dude named Spock Avriel, that's what he calls himself, contacted me and he was like, hey, I got a record player if you want it, and I'll hook you up. And he actually did it. So now I can actually listen to them, and they sound really cool. And thanks to you guys, because a lot of you suggested getting certain hardware to connect to it to make sure the sound quality was better, because I don't know fuck all about that. So Uh, what would I like to see in Shenmue 3? Dude, I actually did an entire podcast on a different channel all about that. So you could check that out. Um, I think it's called That Video Game Show. I vaguely recall. Then look that up, like That Video Game Show, and then look up my name. You should find it. Do I think Spyro might come back or be with Skylanders forever? I don't know enough about Spyro's situation. I mean, is he forced to only do Skylanders stuff? Because I wasn't aware of that. Batman DLC for Shenmue 3 seems unlikely. Do I get Pokemon vinyl? No. The ones I have are all Sega based. Like I got Shenmue, obviously. I have Streets of Rage 2, Super Hang On, some other ones. Are you looking forward to E3 2016? I was this close to going to E3 2016. I got some free passes, but I don't have anywhere to stay, and I don't want to pay for the flight, so I'm not going. But Machinima hooked me up with free passes if I want to go, but nah. Yeah, keep comic book shit out of Shenmue 3. Ironically, Shenmue 3 almost became just a comic, which is sad. Though there is a comic of Shenmue 2 that it was only viewable on the Xbox version, I guess, that shows a bit of the prequel of what happened while he was on the boat between Shenmue 1 and 2. How much do I earn from YouTube? Dude, I don't ask you how much you make on wherever you work. Do I feel that controllers have reached their design threshold? In other words, I think what you're saying is, like, is it possible for them to make better controllers? I assume there's always a possibility for improvement, but it's like you're kind of, there's only so many designs you can make that people will enjoy. So I don't know. Maybe I think there's always room for improvement, but at the same time, there's very few controllers where I've held and I was like, this is actually awful for some reason or another. Will I visit Greece? I'm not opposed to it, but I have no plans to go to Greece. If you could bring back a Sega series besides Shenmue, well, I don't have to pick Shenmue because it's already coming back. But if I could pick one other than that, what would I resurrect? That's a good one. I don't know. That's I might want to see something more obscure because, like, people will say, like, oh, I want to see another Knights game or something like that. It's like, yeah, but that one's more obvious. You know, something weirder like Rystar or Burning Soldiers or whatever that one was for the Saturn. Stuff like that. Just weirder, more obscure franchises. The best game for any such references would be Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing or Sonic All-Stars Racing Transformed, which is the second one. Because that's full of nothing but fan service. Of all these great Sega franchises that never really got sequels. So they kind of pushed them all into one. Captain Adam Smash says, Xbox One is the best controller ever. It's fantastic. I don't dislike the controller, but there are definitely things about that controller that could use improvement. Specifically the thumbsticks and the way they basically take your skin off. That's why they get so dirty. I don't like that. But aside from that, I think it's better. Although I'm not a huge fan of the way they place the front bumpers. Outrun or Gain Ground? I don't think I've ever played Gain Ground, although I was never a huge fan of Outrun. Yeah, see, people will say things like Jet Set Radio should be brought back. It's like, yeah, but see, the problem with Jet Set Radio is so many people know that one. I mean, don't people forget, like, how many obscure Sega franchises exist. So it would be fun just for the sake of it to see some of the weirder ones come back. But certainly wouldn't be opposed to Jet Set Radio making a return. Well, a suggestion was having Conker's Bad Fur Day have a sequel. It's like, I'm all for that, but that wasn't a Sega franchise. Have I used the Xbox Elite controller? Yes, I have. I used that when I played, what was it, Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six, the new one that Ubisoft made. Rainbow Six Siege, sorry. I went to an event in Los Angeles that they brought me out for, and they gave me that controller to play with. I didn't keep it or anything. It was just the controller that was part of the console. And I was like, oh, all right. I didn't really get much out of it. It's like the controller itself. I just thought it was like heavier. And I think the D-pad on mine was kind of fucked up, so it wasn't that awesome. But I would be opposed. I wouldn't be opposed to trying it again. How do I catalog my game collection? A lot of typing. and just keeping lists, and then keeping those lists like in Google Drive and stuff, and then just checking it. Do I have a Laserdisc player? Yes, I have one. I have the Pioneer Laser Active that has that had like a Sega Genesis built into it. I have that. I did a video on it a while back. How many Wii U games do I have? I don't know offhand. I've a lot of them, especially I've been trying to narrow that down because I think, I've been saying for a long time that I think Wii U stuff is things collectors are going to go nuts for. Because the system is nearing its end. It doesn't have that big of a library. It's kind of perfect for collectors. So, yeah. I was trying to jump on that and get as many of them as possible beforehand. So, I've been kind of tracking down some of them, especially lately. Any thoughts on Dark Souls 3? My other channel, we're going to do a live stream of it on Wednesday, if you want to check that out, unless it, for some reason, falls apart. But that channel is Game Society Pimps. Feel free to check it out. Do I ever play any Dreamcast games online currently? For those who don't know, you can do that still, although you have to go through private servers. I think DreamcastTalk.com has a lot of information on how to get that set up. But the answer to the actual question, no, I don't actually do that. Thoughts on Star Fox Zero? I pre-ordered it because apparently that other second game that comes with it will only be available through the first print run, which makes sense. Kind of like the way Bayonetta 2 only had the first print run had Bayonetta 1 and then the second version didn't. Am I friends with any other YouTubers? Yeah. Yeah. I do you want specifics or just people I've encountered or people I would actually chill with? I mean, none of them live here, so I don't see them on any sort of regular basis. Thoughts on the PlayStation Vita and PlayStation TV? I don't have a PlayStation Vita. I don't really care much about handhelds, so I have no desire to rush out and buy one. PlayStation TV, I have one, but due to it's first of all, I don't really have any games for the Vita anyway. But due to its compatibility issues, I've never really bothered to pursue it. I think the PlayStation TV was a very missed opportunity because by the time they decided to release it, it was their Vita was pretty much dead anyway. Because the PS3, Xbox One, and PS4 are region free, you're going to get more physical games that are from Europe and Japan. I was doing that for a bit, and then I stopped because a lot of them, the exclusives, particularly the European ones, kept eventually coming over here. So I've decided to hold off until I kind of know which ones are actually going to be true exclusives. Thoughts on Yooka-Laylee? I was really sad that that's not getting a physical console release. I'm not even sure it is getting a console release, period. I think it might be getting some digital ones for PS4 and Xbox One. But I was actually really hoping that would get a physical Wii U version, but no such luck. People are asking, all right, so example, people are saying that they think I might know Alpha Omega Sin and Happy Console Gamer. I've never conversed with Alpha Omega Sin. I do know Happy Console Gamer. I've never met him. I've talked to him online multiple times but I've never seen him personally. What upcoming independent Dreamcast game am I most looking forward to? Maybe Elysian Shadows. But I might have a small bias there just because those guys have talked to me a lot and they actually asked me some advice on things, and actually, no, I take that back. It was also Star Saber. Those guys talked to me too. Yeah, maybe Star Saber actually, because I mean, as cool as Elysian Shadows looks, it doesn't look particularly like my type of game because I'm not too into the RPG style of game. Whereas Star Saber, I like platformers, and it comes off more like a platformer. So I think I'll actually enjoy playing that one more. Can I show you my man cave, as people are asking? No. When I inevitably have to leave YouTube at some point, I don't know when that will be. There's no plans for that anytime soon. But when that happens, I keep saying, that will be my last video. I'll finally be all right, guys, here's everything I got. Been swell. See ya. But not doing that before then. Would I see the Sly Cooper movie? I mean, eventually. It's not anything I would look forward to particularly. That's going to be interesting because that's Sony's next big move to make some sort of tentpole franchise for movies, is to have to kind of use their PlayStation IPs and try to hope to connect them in some way, but I imagine they'll fuck it up royal. And that's not a knock against Sony. It's just a knock against every film company that isn't Disney doesn't seem to know how to build a cinematic universe. Ukulele is getting released on all current consoles. Don't know if it'll be physical, someone says. Well, that was Glenjamin Glutton. That's a cool name. All right. Does that include Wii U? I mean, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to get a digital version anyway, but if it was physical, I would most certainly get it. Favorite game based on a DC or Marvel property? You know what? All right, I can't say it's my favorite one, but you know what game was surprisingly good? Superman Returns on the Xbox 360 was a surprisingly good game for what it is. It wasn't a great game. It was actually more interesting than the movie. Because the movie doesn't have enough to make a game, like a story, so they had to make up all sorts of things for Superman to do, which was much more interesting than the movie. And I liked that. It had a giant open world environment, and as Superman you can go anywhere. I really liked it, but it has zero replay value. Hey Julian, he missed the first hour. Don't worry, the whole thing will get uploaded to YouTube. It's mostly about me complaining, basically, about the direction of the DCU and how I don't really like the way they're going. Just a heads up, guys. I think I'm gonna go in like 7 minutes. So if you want to give me some flash questions here, we'll wrap things up. Oh, and could you guys tell me if you enjoyed this? Like, do you want me to do more live streams where I kind of talk about one specific subject for a while and then we do some Q&A? Or did you guys like absolutely hate this and you don't want me to ever do this again? You let me know. But I mean, okay, so I guess the pitch is a little bit different. Every once in a while I might do a live stream where it's nothing but Q&A, but I kind of like the idea of semi-frequently doing a live stream where I specifically talk about some subject, generally not video game related, and then shifting into Q&A where you guys ask whatever the hell you want. You let me know if you like that or not. You played Superman Returns on the DS. Well, I would imagine it wasn't very good on the DS. I think that game was... I don't know if that game was even... I can't imagine it was actually the same type of game, because that game was massive. So the DS version, I can't imagine was anywhere near the same thing. Do more. It seems like you guys are enjoying it. I appreciate that. It's not bad considering I'm just sitting here with a shitty little webcam and everything. Believe me, I would like to get... maybe I'll invest in a better webcam, or at least I think I might know someone who has a webcam they don't want because it's old, but it's better than mine. So maybe I'll get that. All right, it seems pretty universal that you guys want me to keep doing that. Thank you, I appreciate that. What did I think of the Deadpool movie? That's a really good question. Thank you, Mr. Slender 2. I really like Deadpool. That movie gave me so much hope for Fox's comic book division because it was just such a good film that really shouldn't have been made under all of the previous administrations that had just been fucking with it. I mentioned this earlier in the stream. There was an exec at Fox, the guy who was like most responsible for derailing the X-Men and fucking up so many of their decisions. There's a really good channel called Midnight's Edge, I think is the name of the channel. They did a whole series on why Fox was awful under this one guy. And he was the dude blocking Deadpool forever. And once he was gone, they basically said, all right, maybe we'll invest some interest in Deadpool. And the success of it on the face of it was great for comic book movies and great for that franchise and great for all those things. But it is going to unfortunately have the Dark Knight effect. After the Dark Knight came out, the movie was such a success that Hollywood doesn't understand why things are successful. They just take like one aspect of something and say, all right, apply it to everything. The thing they took away from Dark Knight was, okay, you need a crazy villain like the Joker, and you need the movie to be dark and brooding. And if you do that, then every movie you make will be successful. So unfortunately, comic book movies largely followed that model for a long time. And we still see that in the DC movies especially, because, I mean, Man of Steel Superman's like a colorful, vibrant, excitable character, and they took him to be like, I'm sad, and then they had in the second one, they had, what's his name? Jesse Eisenberg was doing a Joker impression the whole movie. It was awful in that sense. So I think that the Deadpool is going to have the same kind of effect, where we already saw it immediately when DC turned around. They're like, we're going to release the R-rated, darker, more violent cut of Superman or Batman v Superman. It's like, dude, you're not getting it. That's Dark Deadpool makes sense. It makes sense for Deadpool to have a movie like that. It doesn't make sense for Batman and Superman to have a movie like that. That's why things like Lobo would be amazing. And I think that's what it could do in a good sense, is it could greenlight projects like Lobo, characters that make a lot of sense, but that's also a DC property, and DC doesn't seem to know what the hell they're doing. And that's another reason I want someone like, Kevin Smith, who's good at building a cinematic universe, or me, I would do it. They'll never ask me. They wouldn't know who the fuck I was, nor would they care. But if they did, I would tell them, like, these are the properties that make sense and all that stuff. And yeah, that I loved Deadpool, and I think it potentially did a lot of great things and a lot of awful. Are you guys still seeing me? YouTube seems to have suddenly kind of shit out. Anybody? All right, never mind. It says, I guess. All right, I'm still there. Sorry, the YouTube feed just suddenly had that spiraling loop of death, and I just assumed the stream was over, which isn't too bad because I guess I'm going to end in 3 minutes anyway. So, let's do a couple more power questions. Dreamcastic channel. Shout out to my buddy Jonathan there. He asks, favorite pizza in Chicago, Lou Malnati's. I've worn a T-shirt for it multiple times. So yeah, that's my favorite place. If you ever come to Chicago, that's the place to go for deep dish pizza, especially. But that's if you want deep dish. Ronald, remember Ronald, I brought you some frozen version of that. Nowhere near as good because it had been it'd been on a couple of planes, it'd been in multiple fridges and freezers and stuff, but hopefully you got a small 10% sense of what it's supposed to be. Shout out to Ronald. Did I see the trailer for Doctor Strange? Yes, I did. Looks fine. I gotta be honest, it didn't look like anything where I was like, holy shit, I can't wait to see this. But I have faith in Marvel, which DC has not earned, and I want them to. Believe me, I want them to. But yeah, I'll see it, but I don't know if I'll do it right away. I really want to see Civil War, though. Really want to see Civil War. Thoughts on Spider-Man's look in Civil War? I had nothing against it. I'm not like a huge aficionado on those characters in particular. I've never really looked at any of their suits and been like, that's fucking awful. So whatever. Jordan or Pippin? Jordan. Come on. Pippin's great, but Jordan is Jordan. Somebody says they're coming to Chicago this summer. What do you recommend doing? It depends on how touristy you feel like being. If you're just coming and you're just like, I want to check out a game store, yeah, there's those options. Like People Play Games, probably the best game store in Chicago. Again, that's called People Play Games. There's that. But if you're coming here, you're like, I don't know, I want to see stuff. The Sears Tower observation deck is really awesome. If you're a sports fan, we got all sorts of teams that are always doing stuff. You could do the Dark Knight tour where they actually show you all the places they filmed. Chicago's a food town. Like, we have a ton of food. Like, that's one of the things you do here for entertainment is you eat, because we have a huge variety on that. So yeah. But again, it all depends on the time of the year you're coming, because there's also things of like museums. Hopefully the George Lucas Museum is still coming. We have all sorts of options like that. Again, it depends on your interests. I played Quantum Break. My thoughts. I liked it, but I think Angry Joe just put out his review of Quantum Break, and I gotta be honest, he kind of hit the nail on the head. I mean, I only finished 2 levels of that game, and apparently I'm already 30% of the way completed. I was like, really? Because it's not apparently that long of a game. What makes it longer is you have these really long cinematic portions that they filmed, and they're not... They don't splice together the way I think that the filmmakers intended, or also the developers intended. At times, and I really hate to say this, but at times, it felt like the TV show portion of the game was like the Resident Evil movies if they were made for television. Because it's all about like this one company, like Umbrella from Resident Evil, in this case Monarch, is like the company, and they're evil, and they just do bad things, grrr, and they control the whole world. But there's a couple of ragtag people that are fighting against them, and rather than making zombies, they're making time-traveling people. But there's one guy who can stand up to it, and I don't know, that's just how it felt to me. So we're a little bit over the time, so I'll take 3 more questions, and then I'm gonna get out. I don't understand that question, so I'm not going to count it. Pokken Tournament. Haven't played it. I did pick it up, though. You guys will see it in the next playload. Anybody else? Or are we ending it? Do you think Nintendo will look into movies or TV? I would not be surprised if Nintendo licensed a lot of their franchises over to television properties, but at the same time, I would hope they're smart enough to do temporary deals. You don't want to do the kind of deal like Fox did with Marvel, where they gave them Fantastic Four almost indefinitely. And you don't want to do stuff like that, because then you'll never get the characters back for the TV option. So again, I hope if Nintendo ever considers doing stuff like that, that they're smart enough to retain full ownership of the characters. All right, and our last question. I'll try and find a real good one here, one that I think most people will like to find the answer out to. Because there's questions like this. This one won't count. Somebody's asking Kobe Bryant's last game. I didn't watch it. Kudos to him. Respect. I saw him play in his his first year. I guess that would be a freshman. I saw him play in that at the United Center here in Chicago against the Bulls. It was amazing. I've got stuff with his signature on it. Respect to the player. I want to talk about Rogue One. I want to talk about Star Wars. Trust me, I do. That'll be a whole different video. So let's go with something else. Come on, guys. Throw one at me. A good one. Something intricate. Something I can actually talk about for a few minutes. Okay. Goonies Gaming has come up with a good question. Why am I not that into handheld gaming? That's a good question. So here's the thing. I don't have anything against handheld gaming. I don't think like, oh, it just sucks because it's handheld. Nothing like that. There's a lot of amazing games on handheld platforms. The problem is that I just don't like the idea of like I'm staring at a little screen this whole time. Like it's just it's like, dude, I have a television. I have that. I can use that. And as a result, that's why I love things like the Game Boy Player, because you get the whole library of Nintendo's like great Game Boy series, all playable on the GameCube. Fucking awesome. I'll play it that way. The PS Vita or the PlayStation TV should have been that for PS Vita games, but it fucked it up. It mostly boils down to the fact that I just don't like to stare at a little screen and hold this thing up kind of awkwardly, or even pull it back. It's like, dude, I could be doing so many other things than this. I just don't want to do that. And I know people are like, well, it's great for travel and stuff. It's like, dude, I'm 29 now. When I'm traveling, I'm either the driver or I'm flying and I just want to sleep or have like things to write up. Like I don't have time to do that anymore. And when I was a kid, I did it a little bit, but at the same time, even then I was like, well, I have a TV. I'll just go with that. So what I wish Nintendo luck with NX, because if NX truly does mesh the handheld with the console, that could be amazing if they do it right. It could be anytime you buy the game, you can play it on either of them. That makes everybody happy, provided of course that it's physical. Because if it's digital, fuck it, I'm out. But that's me. So I think that will do it, guys. I've had fun doing this. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. I hope you like the. If you want me to do this again, you guys all seem to be into it. The next subject video would be on Star Wars, because that's the one I kept holding back, not wanting to talk about. But trust me, I got a lot to say. So that'll do it for now. Thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. If I could... Yeah, okay. So, all right, sorry. I'm just clicking around trying to find the right tab. All right, guys. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you all later.